Hey everyone, this is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. Happy Friday, everybody. Today we're going to take a look at Venus moving through the heart of the sun this weekend, and we are going to take Venus through all 12 whole sign horoscopes today and give you a sense of where Venus's conjunction with the sun is occurring by whole sign house. This will give you a sense of what topics are likely to be activated. Today, I also have 3 questions to ask yourself given the placement of Venus in all of the 12 whole sign houses. These are going to be the same for everybody. I'm going to start off by introducing us to these 3 questions to consider, as this is a moment of rebirth for Venus. And I think this will be a nice point of meditation to add into the horoscopes as well. So that is our agenda for today. Remember to like and subscribe. Oh my gosh, we are so close to 80,000 subscribers on the channel. Had a couple of videos that did really well recently, and we're very close to our goal of 80,000 by the vernal equinox, the 0 Aries moment. So thank you to everybody. Welcome to the channel. If you're new in the past couple of months, I hope you've been enjoying the content. And if you haven't yet, take a minute to like and subscribe. It really does help us grow everything that we do. You can find transcripts of any of these daily talks on the website, which is nightlightastrology.com. If we go over there right now, a couple of brief promotions. One, go to live talks. You'll see my talk in April coming up on essential dignities. What they are, how to use them, how they work. Don't be scared of them. What does it mean if you have a fallen or exalted planet in rulership or detriment? What do these things actually mean? What is the logic behind them? How can we use them sensitively today? So that will be a good talk. Any of these talks that are coming up, Jupiter in Cancer, Uranus trine Pluto, 9th house, these are the next couple of talks coming up on my schedule of monthly webinars. If you cannot attend those webinars live, the recording is always available for you to watch on your own time. And so check those out. On the events page, go to speaker series, and you'll see that we have the last of our talks in our spring speaker series coming up this weekend. Drew Levanti is giving a talk called Myth, Math, and Magic in Ancient Astrology. These speaker talks are free. We pay our speakers nicely thanks to the Kickstarter and make them available and free and accessible to all of you as a way of saying thank you for supporting the school and the channel. And also, if you support the annual Kickstarter, you know that we have an affordable astrology service that's also funded through the Kickstarter. Check this out. It's tiered readings with our course directors, some of our tutors, and some of our talented alumni who are all in the process of building their work and practices as astrologers. This provides flexible, affordable pricing for really quality readings, people that we stand behind that we know to be very good readers, very sensitive souls. So we hope that you will check that out. The other thing I am promoting is you guys probably yesterday saw that my wife Ashley came on the show. She's a clinical herbalist, someone who works with plant spirit medicine. You can check her upcoming apprenticeship out on the Skyhouse Herb page. That's skyhouseherbs.com. I'll put there's the website link there. You go to her page and you are going to find her blog. She also has a YouTube channel, Skyhouse Herbs. So if you enjoyed listening to her talk about remediation advice with nettles yesterday for all this Aries fire energy, you can check her work out there, and be sure to check out her Herbal Foundations apprenticeship, which also has need-based pricing, just like all of my programs. So a couple of cool things coming up that I hope that you will find valuable. On that note, let's turn our attention to the real-time clock, where we will be taking a look at Venus's cazimi. So let us move forward here. Oops, I'm going by hour. Let's go by day. So here we are on Friday, March 21st. And as we are looking at this today, Venus is at about 3 degrees of Aries and the sun is at 1 degree of Aries. So here we are at our spring equinox moment, and just crossed the spring equinox moment, and Venus is about to be at the heart of the sun. That technical name for that is called cazimi, which means at the heart. And this will take place tomorrow. That's Saturday. So if we speed this along by some hours, we're going to see that Venus comes into the 2nd degree alongside of the sun at the 2nd degree. This is late, or like early morning, 7-8 a.m. Central Time, Saturday, March 22nd. So the Venus cazimi happens tomorrow. Now, if we track this forward, we're going to notice that they separate fully by Sunday morning, where they're not sharing the same degree. Typically, the definition that traditional astrologers followed for a Venus cazimi would be on the same zodiacal degree. And then you have some people saying within a certain number of minutes of 1 degree, or simply on the same degree. Either way, that really does place our Venus cazimi at tomorrow. Saturday, March 22nd. Now, you could be feeling this today because Venus is combust and burning up, and this is sort of the crucible of Venus's retrograde cycle. This is the moment where Venus is dying and being reborn. Did a video recently called Saturn is Dying. that got a reaction. But anyway, Venus is metaphorically dying and now going into the process of rebirth. Let us isolate everything in our perspective here, except for the Sun and Venus, to map out this death and rebirth that is taking place. So as we back this up, Venus gets her retrograde began at the beginning of March. So we're looking at right around March 2nd into the 3rd, Venus starts moving backward. From that time forward, as Venus retrogrades back toward the Sun, and I did a whole video on Venus's synodic cycle with the Sun, you could go back and watch just a few weeks ago, Venus retrogrades right into an 8-degree range that we call combust. Combustion means that the planet is burning up. This is an acute phase of burning off karma, you might say, for Venus. But what happens is when Venus gets at the heart of the Sun, Venus is, in a sense, infused with a new archetypal image. Remember that the Sun is the carrier of light, and light itself was thought to be an emblem or a symbol in the visible, manifest universe of that which is divine and eternal. Light is the source of life, clarity, wisdom, illumination, vitality. All of these principles made the symbol of the Sun one connected with that which is eternal, including the archetypal realm itself, which is where we get the sense of Venus conjoining the Sun as a moment of archetypal infusion, an archetypal infusion of new life for Venus that she will then carry into a new cycle. A new cycle that will be in the morning star phase now, not the evening star phase. She also has a cycle she carries forth from the conjunction with the Sun in direct motion, which she then expresses in her evening star manifestation. So the morning star manifestation of Venus is carrying forth a new image infused by the Sun at the time of the Gazimi, that's tomorrow. And then she brings it forth into visible expression in the morning star position, which is thought to be a little bit more yang or masculine for Venus. Think, for example, the fact that Venus has 2 rulerships, one in Taurus, one in Libra. Libra would be the more masculine place for Venus, where she often expresses beauty in terms of things that are a little bit more abstract and reasonable, like an architect or like an architectural digest or a garden designer's manual or something like that. I'm just being a little, I'm kind of exaggerating it, but you get the idea that Venus as a masculine expression can be a little bit more abstract, or sometimes more fiery, or more assertive, or more aggressive, or a little more active as opposed to, say, receptive. So those qualities are a part of how we understand Venus emerging right now as a morning star. But the point is that she emerges as a morning star in her exaltation in Pisces in the weeks ahead. Once Venus is about 15 degrees away from the Sun, which is by about the beginning of April. At that time, then Venus is starting to appear as the morning star in her exaltation in Venus, in Pisces, the exaltation of Venus, a very feminine, watery sign. So it's a kind of interesting thing to see a morning star Venus appearing in her exaltation in a feminine sign. She's more aggressive, more assertive in bringing forth a new archetypal image for our lives, we might say, but still lacking none of the grace and emotional nuance and imagination and fantasy and romance that the sign of Pisces brings. So really an interesting next part of Venus's life cycle that's coming for us right now. The point is that what we're dealing with is going to be carrying forth from this moment through to the beginning of April. And then, Venus continues to carry out in the morning star position for quite some time. If we take this forward, that morning star phase that Venus is carrying is kind of new agenda for our life. She'll go back through Aries in the month of May. And then, kind of keeps coming along in direct motion. Goes through Taurus in June. So a lot of lovely morning star manifestations of Venus. She's going to go through a lot of different changes, but in that morning star position, carrying the new archetypal design or image or imprint of this Cazimi. And so just to show you how long it goes, this morning star phase for Venus lasts a very long time. We're in August right now. I'm in August of 2025. So I'm going to just keep taking it forward and show you what happens. Actually, I'll take it forward by weeks. That'll go just a little bit quicker. So it isn't until Venus gets to within about 15 degrees of the sun that she disappears. Now that's right around the beginning of November. So at that time, we're starting to see a shift from Venus to where she's becoming invisible again. And this is the equivalent of the Venus cycle now going through another death. She will become invisible beneath the beams of the sun, combust within 8 degrees, and then she will gradually get to the point where she has another cazimi with the sun. And that will not take place until right about here. We're into the sign of Capricorn, and Venus will be getting into that conjunction. What degree is it? Right about here. It's about the 16th degree, January 6th of 2026. The point is measure from cazimi to cazimi. Okay. And we have here in March of 2025, Venus carrying forth a new archetypal agenda for our lives that will not reset again into a new Venus cycle until January 6th of next year. That's fascinating, right? So you get a sense of how important this moment of rebirth is. It means that the events and things happening right now around this time of Venus's rebirth, however subtle they might be, however unconscious they may be, are acting as a seeding point for a Venus cycle that will express itself fully all the way until January of 2026. Now, if you want to know where the current cycle has been, we take it backward. So this is really fun and another really fun way to track. And I like providing you guys with this stuff. And don't worry, we'll get to horoscopes. So if you're like, just give me my horoscope. I'm like, don't worry, don't fuss. We'll get there. So now if we go back in time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you back to the last Venus cazimi, because then you can track the beginning of this cycle with also the end of the last cycle. So the beginning of the last cycle that's now ending, we take back to right about here. So this is the Venus cazimi that was taking place last year. And we see it starting around June 3rd of 2024. So June 3rd, June 4th, June 5th, the two planets are traveling together in about the middle of the sign of Gemini. And so from June of 2024 up until March of 2025, we have been in an evening star Venus phase, broadly speaking, that was carried forth from their conjunction that took place in June of 2024. So that becomes a really meaningful way to track. And you can, of course, track through all the houses and it's like going down a rabbit hole. You can go as deep as you want with the tracking of the cycle. But broadly speaking, think about how relationships are changing, values and desires are changing, attractions and things that we're attracted to or repulsed by are changing. What we seek or pursue for the sake of pleasure or happiness might be changing. Any kinds of relationships, again, might be changing. So you think about what kinds of changes have taken place for everything Venusian, including things like sisters, women. I mean, there's lots of very specific manifestations of Venus, but broadly speaking, values, relationships, desires, pleasure, happiness, sensuality. How have those themes evolved since last June in your life up until now? That's a good thing to reflect on. And then again, considering this is the reset moment for now a morning star Venus, a lot more assertive in bringing forth new desires, changes in relationships, etc. And this will be taking place all the way until January of 2026. Okay, so some fun tracking for all of you there. Now, what I'm going to do is bring their cazimi into focus here. For us on March 22nd, Saturday. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this through all 12 whole signs for horoscopes. But I'm going to ask you to consider 3 questions, no matter what your horoscope is. If you're going to listen to this, by the way, I recommend listening for your rising sign. That will correspond to the whole sign house version of your birth chart. But you can listen to your sun sign as well, whatever you prefer. Now, 3 questions to ask. One is, what relationships are seeking change in my life right now? At the time of a Venus cazimi in Aries, questions about power dynamics in relationships could be at play. But also just the initiatory qualities of Aries. They seek change. They seek newness. What relationships are seeking change? What new relationships are forming? What old relationships are seeking revision? Or existing relationships, I should say. Number two, what new values or desires are emerging? Venus is so connected to what we like, what pleases us, what excites us, what do we desire? What do we want out of life? And how is this being refined or changing as we evolve spiritually? And number three, where am I seeking a new form of happiness? Just broadly speaking, what makes me feel happy or complete or creatively fulfilled? These are the kinds of questions that I recommend reflecting on and asking for all 12 whole sign horoscopes that we are about to do. And I will refresh on them as we go. All right, starting with Aries. If you are an Aries sun or rising and you have this conjunction in your first house, the question might be, what is the relationship change that you're seeking with yourself? What kinds of things are you considering when it comes to your own character, identity, body, health, appearance, aesthetics, how you present yourself to the world, how you're known or seen, or how you show up in relationships? What are the dynamics of your individual psychology, how they appear in relationships, and what feedback are you getting right now? Or what new values or desires are emerging as very relevant to your sense of selfhood and identity? Or what new forms of pleasure or happiness are making themselves very clear? Like, this is what I want. This is what I'm seeking. Very existential and personal for that first house. We go along to Taurus. Taurus places this into the 12th house, a place that is thought of as a bit of a blind spot or a place of unconsciousness, a place that things may undermine us, people may undermine us, we may undermine ourselves, or we may just not see something or believe in something. So what kinds of relationships are undermining you or are healthy? What are the blind spots you have around love, sex, marriage, relationships, friendships? What are the blind spots you have around sexuality? What new values or desires are coming from an unconscious place, asking or seeking to be recognized and validated? Or where are you looking for new forms of happiness, or where is your orientation with respect to pleasure, and what is healthy pleasure and what is unhealthy? These are all things coming up right now. So think about that blind spot of the 12th house as seeking your attention and seeking for things to be incorporated or understood or seen where they've been invisible. For Geminis, these two planets meet the Cazimi in the 11th house. So what social dynamics are seeking change? What relationships among groups, communities, allies, friends, social circles or networks, colleagues, how are you being asked to change or revise those kinds of relationships, or your participation in various groups, or your identification with various groups? What are the new values or desires emerging in your life right now that are somehow reflected in the type of people that are best for you to be associating with communally or socially? And then finally, what kinds of happiness or pleasure do you need out of your social connections with other human beings, out of your groups, out of friends? Which allies or connections are the most beneficial and which need some kind of revision? So that place of groups and community is very important for Geminis right now. For Cancers, we put this into the 10th house, the place that is the public facing part of your life. For many people, that will be your job, but just your interaction with the social public realm and your role or actions in the world. So what workplace relationships are seeking change or renewal or revision? And what new relationships are being established, or how are power dynamics or differentials or struggles or conflicts being avoided or dealt with in the workplace? What are the new values or desires that are emerging for you personally with respect to your career and the direction of your professional life or your ambitions? What new ideas are you getting excited about? What new forms of happiness or pleasure or creative fulfillment are you seeking to incorporate more of with respect to your career? So you can just kind of play with these Venusian themes and ask meaningful questions. That can really be useful when you're trying to figure out, what are all these Aries planets doing here, but especially a Venus reset happening in this house. All right, for Leos, we're looking at the 9th house, a place of higher beliefs, learning, teachers, long journeys and travel, but also just our pursuit of truth and our philosophical moral compass. What relationships are seeking change in your life due to ongoing philosophical, spiritual growth and evolution, due to the things you are learning, due to your spirituality? When relationships evolve because we are evolving spiritually, that's a really important moment for us when we realize I need more spiritual friends, or my existing relationships need to have a little bit more room for the spiritual part of me that's coming forth. New relationships in terms of new classroom experiences, new teachers, new forms of learning or teaching, maybe new travel abroad that's a part of some new desires that you have to see more of the world. What new values or desires are emerging, and how do you make place for them in your life philosophically? How do they fit into the scheme of your values and beliefs? And also, what is sensuality, pleasure, sexuality? How do those things fit in with your moral and spiritual compass? Your framework of beliefs. Does it have enough room for who you're becoming creatively, sexually, as a Venusian being? So a reset in this ninth house of the higher mind for Venus makes some really interesting possibilities here for Leos. With Virgos, we're looking at this in the eighth house. I think this is fascinating because the eighth house has so much to do with soul contracts and indebtedness. Indebtedness is when it is reciprocal and a give and take rooted in conscious valuing of one another is beautiful. And this is why so many positive things can happen in the eighth house. But insofar as we ever use each other, or there are all different kinds of karmic exchanges that we fulfill in our relationships with each other, often so unconsciously. It's not like we're trying to hurt anyone or anyone's trying to hurt us, but we sometimes painfully are a part of each other's growth and evolution, and we have these intricate karmic relationships with each other. How are those manifesting in your life right now? What kinds of relationships are seeking release karmically to free debts and obligations, or are paying off somehow and showing you the fruits of their the fruits of a cycle? It's like, this is what the relationship yielded. This is what the contract gave. We're reaping what's been sown here in various soul contracts with other beings. And then maybe we're thinking about how we want to do relationships going forward and what kinds of exchanges are important or we need to be careful of. Number two, what new values and desires are emerging within the fabric of our relationships, and how we seek out each other as ways or means to fulfill various desires and hopes and values and preferences. And then, how do we help each other fulfill some desire for happiness? Like, you're a part of my happiness, I'm a part of your happiness. What does that exchange look like? And then the death and rebirth of relationships in this house by facing fears and anxieties and working through them in meaningful ways. So these are the things that come to my mind for Virgos. We go along to Libra, and it is just the quintessential house of relationships. So, what relationships in the seventh house are seeking revision, modification, change, power dynamics, and differentials? You've heard me say this many times before. It's so stereotypical, but it's like Libras are so harmonious that Aries have a little bit easier time being, kind of direct and forward and assertive about their own desires and wishes. So sometimes you see a transit like this and you wonder, how are Libras standing up more for themselves, or being more assertive, or exploring what it means to have a give and take of preferences and desires in relationships, as opposed to having everything be perfectly balanced at all times. But also, just what new values or desires are emerging in relationships? What are the hottest and fieriest elements or energies at play in relationships right now, or friendships, or any other kind of interpersonal dynamic? And then, in what way am I seeking new or different forms of happiness in my relationships? Like, how are my relationships satisfying my need for pleasure and satisfaction on some creative fulfillment? Are my relationships creatively satisfying? All of these kinds of questions really present for Librans right now. But don't be surprised if it also shows up as shifts or changes happening in the life of a partner, not just something happening in a relationship. It can also show up sort of through something a partner's going through. All right. So for Scorpios, we look at this in the sixth house. And I wonder, because the sixth house is a place of competition, conflict, disease, sickness, but also hard work and sacrifice, and kind of an element of service here. What relationships are seeking change insofar as you are trying to be free from a feeling of conflict or sacrifice or hard work or frustration in certain relationships. And you're saying, you know what, I just don't want the trouble anymore. I don't want the drama anymore. So letting go of relationships, seeking change in relationships rooted in desire to be free of conflict, drama, exhaustion, fatigue, etc. Kind of a feeling of revitalizing or renewing relationships, or even letting go of some if they're not, if they are a drain somehow. Number two would be what new values, desires, wishes, aspirations, creatively or otherwise, are emerging that you are recognizing this is going to be worth the work and effort. There will be some work, effort, and sacrifice involved here, but for the sake of what I'm desiring, what I'm wishing, what I'm longing for, what I'm finding so attractive right now, I'm willing to do the work or sacrifice. That's another question to consider. And then, you know, am I happy? And if I'm not happy, then what are the factors that are keeping me from happiness? Is it lifestyle? Is it relationships? Is it work? Is it, things that drain my energy? Just reflecting deeply on happiness and what is contributing toward it versus what is hindering it right now for that sixth house. Very important for Scorpios. All right, going forward to Sagittarius, we place these energies in the fifth house. And I think of the fifth house called the joy of Venus, the place of pleasure, the place of good fortune, quintessential house of Venus. Just very basically for Sagittarians, what relationships are seeking change rooted in your desire for more sensuality, more creativity, more spontaneity, more heart-based connection? How are relationships resetting themselves because they are or are not providing enough pleasure or kind of excitement? The fifth house is a place where we really enjoy life and feel creatively satisfied by it. So are relationships doing well to participate in that kind of happiness, or are they keeping us from it? That right now may be at the heart of Venus's reset. Also, what new creative values or desires are emerging? This is a great creative reset for Sagittarians in the fifth house, like new creative projects, new creative aspirations, things that you are attracted to or that you're seeking out for the sake of happiness and pleasure. Look for those things right now to be really clear and sort of clearly presenting themselves. Sometimes they come through during a Venus reset as, you know, this isn't working, but I'm getting clearer about what is. But either way, creative satisfaction, happiness, romance, joy, also maybe some connection here for Sagittarians to the topic of pregnancy and children, or your kids. So watch for some resets there in maybe your relationship with your kids, or developmental patterns in your children, developmental stages being reached or transitioned. Even the topic of love in your kids' lives. You've got teenagers, you know. So move along to Capricorn. We're now in the house of home and family in the fourth. What relationships are seeking for reset or transformation within the home and family? This could be marriage as well, but it's the home and family. It could be your kids. It could be your relatives. It could be your extended family. This is in the private sphere of life. How is your inner life and your the relationships that you have with other people, that where you are able to bring what is deep inside you out and into the relationship space, that inner life being valid and authentic and valued and treasured by those you're close to in the more private or intimate space of life. This is an important time for relationships to make more room for this part of yourself. Number two, what new values, desires are emerging relative to topics like home, family, or living environment? And also, where am I seeking greater happiness or pleasure? Just a greater Venusian sense of harmony, peace, contentment, abundance, comfort with respect to home and family. So watch for a reset happening there in that fourth house for Capricorns. For Aquarians, this is taking place in the third house. Now, I think right away about siblings in this house, or neighbors, or, you know, people kind of in your community or neighborhood. Are their relationships seeking change or being reset or revised or rebirthed somehow with respect to things like siblings, neighbors, kind of like your peers? There's also something here to be said about communicating yourself. How are relationships seeking to change or evolve or grow right now because of a new way you have of expressing yourself within them, or communicating something that is valuable or beautiful to you? It's kind of, I think there's an element of self-expression that's at work here for Aquarians. Also, just, very basically, what new values or desires are emerging, maybe with respect to things like learning or education or communication or technology. And then finally, where are you seeking new forms of happiness or pleasure? And how could the environment around you, thinking of the world around us like a little ecosystem of karma, how can the environment change or adapt to make more room for the forms of happiness that you are most excited by right now, whether that's certain friendships or relationships or space you're trying to create for yourself to, take better care of yourself, whatever it is. It's like, how can the daily environment I live in, the daily fish tank, change and adapt to create more room for happiness? These are the things that I see as very important right now. Again, just think of that mundane topic of siblings, always with the third house. Like, there's something going on with a sister with Venus there, retrograde. And Cazimi. Finally, with Pisces, we have this Cazimi taking place in the second house. When you think about the second house, you're thinking about everything that supports us, material resources that contribute to a feeling of security and comfort and ease in life, whether that's money or possessions or assets or people that support us. So how are our sources of support, our assets and resources, asking to be revised or shifted or changed or transformed in some way along the lines of new values or desires or changes or shifts in values and desires that are emerging? How are forms of support transforming? Maybe being informed by things that we love that we no longer love, or things that we are starting to love and taking the place of old things. Also, like, how are we seeking happiness in relation to things like material comfort, security, assets, possessions, resources? What gives us a sense of happiness or satisfaction? And what is superficial? What don't we need? These are the kinds of changes of value or shifting that I would expect for Pisceans to be looking at with these two planets meeting in the second. So on that note, we've gotten through all 12 signs and just some prompts to work with. I hope you found those valuable. I'm feeling like as I do horoscopes, I was brainstorming the other day saying, like, what would help me take some of the pressure off from the burden I feel doing horoscopes, because you all know, if you watch my channel, that horoscopes are not my favorite kind of content to create, but they're such good bridge content into deeper topics as well. And there's a huge amount of people who may not listen to anything much in astrology other than, say, their horoscopes, because it's so immediately applicable. So I understand that. And I thought, well, you know what if I use some prompts that I can use and sort of maneuver around with all of the 12 whole sign horoscope. So I really enjoyed this format today, but tell me what you think. If you got something good out of it, I'll be glad to hear that. Anyhow, we will see you again Monday. Remember, not next week, but the week after, I will be out of town. My kids are on spring break, and every year we take like a little family vacation. So Alex, Dana, Whitney, and Alexandra will be my subs in 2 weeks, making fun content for you for 5 days of the week. Then I'm back the week after that. But next week, I will be with you breaking down some of the most interesting astrology of the year that's coming up, with Neptune entering Aries, the solar eclipse in Aries, so many big things to come. So I hope that this Venus Cazimi content today gave you something of value to take into your experience of the conjunction happening tomorrow. But have a great weekend, everybody, and we will see you again on Monday. Bye, everyone.